I'm Steve Marchena, and we're going to be exploring the portion of my discography that is still available online. Now, there have recently been a few changes made with that discography, and several of the older albums are now available to stream for free on YouTube. Starting in 1990, and then moving through the year 2019, I'm going to chronologically discuss each of the albums in that discography. I won't be able to tell you much about each album in 1 minute, but I'll make a point to give you some different insights to what you'd find in the text on my website about this. So we'll see you tomorrow, and we'll start in 1990. At the end of 1990, the band I was in at the time, Sex and Witchcraft, went into the recording studio at a place called The Lanes in Allston, and we recorded this tape. See if you can see this. Track 3, It's Gonna Snow. There's a reverse guitar solo there. This is a technique that Jimi Hendrix had used. You listen to the backing track in reverse, and you record a guitar solo, and then you reverse both of them so that the track that you were playing over moves from beginning to end, but your guitar solo is backwards. So that's one of my favorite parts on this album, is the guitar solo at the end of It's Gonna Snow. This was a CD single released in 1998, Risk at Birth. We have a longer release that came out a couple years later. I know I said I was going to show you things that are still available, and technically this is not still available, but the first track wound up on an album called Rock Guitar Dreams, which was released like 17 years later. See if you can see that. I guess a lot of what you see is my reflection there, like that. Risk at Birth. Because, what do I call it, a CD single? Yeah, but there's 2 tracks on there. This band was fun. This is Risk at Birth. This came out, we were recording it in 1999, and it came out in 2000. The band broke up while we were mixing the album. Then we finished the album. We got back together. It was short-lived. Track 7, Dog. That's an actual dog that you hear at the beginning of that recording, and my late friend Mike McGowan volunteered to sneak around in order to get that dog's attention, and he did a great job. So when I hear that dog barking, I think of my friend Mike McGowan. The first 9 tracks were recorded in 1999. I don't know if you can see that or not. And then the last 5 tracks were recorded in 1950. My father was courting my mother, and for a date, he brought her to a recording studio where he booked a half an hour of time. The thing that's really amazing, if you listen to this album, the things that are recorded in 1950, they were recorded in real time. So I don't just mean that there was no overdubs. When you hear time between the pieces here, like the Scarlatti sonatas, tracks 10 and 11, the space between those pieces is real time. My mom just stopped playing and she was quiet. From 1997 through the year 2000, I was a student at Berklee College of Music majoring in performance. In my final semester, I played a bunch of concerts in preparation for my senior recital and documented those concerts on this album, John Mason and Steve Marchena Live in the Fall of 2000. If you know who Stanley Jordan is, he has a finger tapping technique where he's playing the guitar very much as if it was a piano. There's actually 2 tracks here written by John Finn. Look Ma, 2 Hands is track 8, and All Tapped Out is track 9. I'm really glad that it was documented when I was brave enough to perform that kind of thing. In 2003, my then duo partner, John Mason, and I released this album, Music for 2 Guitars and More. Let's see, there's a lot of duets here. We have some Schubert, some Bach, Leo Brouwer, some Bartok. This album ends with the same piece that Live in the Fall of 2000 began with, which is the John Duarte March with special guest Penny Larson. Immediately after I finished Berklee in the year 2000, I put together a group called Hypospace with Penny Larson and Chris Irvin. We released a EP called Emergence in 2001, but that's out of print. What we did here, this is Hypospace 4004. The first 14 tracks on this album were recorded by the band in 2003. The rest of the album, though, starting on track 15, actually is that EP Emergence. So we combined recordings from 2001 with recordings from 2003, and we called the album 4004. This is the Back Bay Guitar Trio's self-titled album from 2003. The group had only been together for a little over a year when we recorded this album in the library of St. Anselm's College. This is not artificial reverb that you're hearing. This is just the huge library at St. Anselm. Another thing I get used to is when we recorded this album, they gave us reserved parking. I kind of thought my life was going to be like that. I thought when I go someplace, they'll have parking reserved for me. It doesn't always work out like that, but for a moment it did, and that's when we recorded this album, 2003's The Back Bay Guitar Trio.
Oh no, it's just the nearness of you.
This album, Let Me Be Strong by Valerie Sneed, we recorded it at Longview. The Rolling Stones had built that studio, and Green Day had recorded their album Dookie there. Here's a quick story about recording this album. Staying overnight, I went to lock the door to the room that I was in, and I realized there were no doorknobs. There was no way to lock it. You just push open the door, and the Green Day song Longview references that when they say, is it inside a house with unlocked doors? So they're referring to Longview Farm Studio where we recorded this.
As you feel.
My friends Igor and Hiroko released this in 2003. The Transcontinental Duo Volume 1. I played on Furusato, the last track with Hiroko, guitar and flute. And at the time, accompanying a flautist was a very new thing to me. So I learned a lot, and Hiroko's a virtuoso, so her playing's amazing. This is some Piazzolla, gypsy songs, Debussy. Look, they altered I don't know if you can be able to see this very well, but they altered a photograph here. It's like a funhouse mirror. I don't know if this is available. The track that I am on here wound up on an album called Classic Guitar Dreams that was released like 12 years later.
City of New York, street level, eye lowball looking up.
For those of you who ever made it to a Circus of the Shattered Monkey show, you know that it was an extraordinarily good time. My band Hypospace would open and close the show and play throughout the night. This is a compilation. It's called Le Cirque, the Soundtrack. My friend Rich Van Vliet organized. It was a touring show. We were all over the Northeast, and it was a lot of fun. Let's open it up right here. Here's this little monkey. See that little monkey on there? There's the monkey, and all kinds of pictures. Rich did a great job with the artwork and the packaging of this. That this particular album is still available anyplace, but it's interesting enough. If you've ever been to the town of Walpole, this is a rock near some train tracks. So this includes a track by the Back Bay Guitar Trio that was also on that self-titled Back Bay Guitar Trio album. But it's just so cool, especially the album cover, Walpole Rocks. 2004 was a fun year. There was a few things that were going on there. One is Hypospace was playing regularly with the Circus of the Shattered Monkey, which is also where I met the guys in Reverend Bob and the Darkness, and I played harmonica for them for a year. I probably practiced harmonica more in that 1 year than ever before that. I dressed up as Sheriff Steve, so I wore a badge and everything, and just played a lot of harmonica. This was a high point on this album for me is the song Dead Man Running, Reverend Bob and the Darkness, Endsville.
Dead man running and he's trying to get away from me. Dead man running and he's trying to get away from me.
In 2005, John Mason and I went to accompany David Newsom while recording this DVD. It's all written in Japanese here. It never got an American release, but I think it's called Accelerate Your Guitar Playing. Let's see if we can see a little picture of David there. Just a lot of Japanese that I can't read, but I got to pop this in the DVD player and check it out. I remember us playing some material from our repertoire and then David discussing and explaining it. Accelerate your guitar playing. From the year 2000 through the year 2019, I have performed at the Hingham Public Library's series with the Boston Classical Guitar Society. I've done that every year. In 2007, that series released a compilation CD that also includes some music by the Back Bay Guitar Trio from our self-titled debut album. David Newsom has a solo piece on here, Frank Wallace, Sunday Sounds Special.
This hospitality is something I would never choose.
I met my friend Ed Abel in 1984 at a private school in biology class. We were fast friends, shared an interest in comic books and then in music. And then in 2007, he released his debut album, Red Ed and the Undead. I remember tracking some lead guitar for this album. There's some whammy bar experiments that I did and all different types of textures. To me, it seemed like this music really needed a texture-based approach to guitar playing. 2008 was a prolific year, and certainly a centerpiece of that year was Hypospace's self-titled album. We really spent more time with the arrangements and mixing on this album more than we ever had before. There we go, Hypospace. Let's take a look. There's a lot to the artwork. Here, there's artist rendition of everybody that is on the album. It's pretty cool. On the other side here is information about it and everything. This is Hypospace's self-titled album. The Back Bay Guitar Trio, we released our second and final album. There's some slide guitar on Gershwin Prelude No. 2, and there's some harmonica on Brubeck's Blue Rondo a la Turk. This is also the album that we were touring when we went to Europe. So it's a special album. Let's see if we can see the back here. That's me and John and David at Back Bay Station. The Back Bay Guitar Trio, The Journey. 2009 saw the formation of a brand new rock band called Superbug. Let's take a look here. Vinny did the artwork. If you want to hear Superbug with Chris Gallivan, this is it. There's also a track on here that did not make it onto Closer to the Brain, which is Euphony, which is, I'm going to say, uncharacteristically happy type of song for Superbug. Believe it or not, we argued about the number of Z's that would be in the title of the album. There are 5 Z's in the buzz. That was a point of contention when we were putting it together. Winter break of 2008 going into 2009, instead of participating in normal holiday activities, I set up the studio to record a bunch of solo classical pieces that I played for a long time, and then released this album, Solo Classical Guitar 2009. This photograph right here was taken by Dave Urban when I was on tour with the Alien Black a few years before that. It's got a nice version of Wake Up Mama, which also appears on Live in the Fall of 2000. But this version's better because the more you practice, the better you get. Solo Classical Guitar 2009. Also in 2009, we get the sophomore release by Red Ed and the Undead, Forgotten Song. Certainly the way that this album was recorded was an advancement over the debut album. Production values are maybe a little bit better. I know that Ed is working on a new album, and it's been a long time. I'm really looking forward to doing some tracking for Ed on his new album. But this was 2009, Red Ed and the Undead, The Forgotten Song.
He's just having fun with his fire gun.
2011 saw the sophomore release from the band Superbug. This is called Closer to the Brain. We got some commercial radio airplay. The back cover of this album is the band on a rock formation. It was slippery. Our drummer, Tony, climbs rocks for fun, but nobody else in the band was really good at it, and we were all pretty terrified when we were taking that photograph that's on the back cover of this album. At the end of 2011, I was hospitalized with some serious health problems. My schedule was severely scaled back from January, certainly through June of 2012. What I did was I found classical recordings that just had never been released, and I compiled them on this album. The first 4 tracks are me and my mom playing guitar and piano together. This is up on iTunes and the different streaming platforms as well. Classic Guitar Dreams. That's me in the hospital there. I was messed up. next album I want to talk about is called Out of This World by Hypospace from 2015. Never got released on CD. There's definitely a trend of digital distribution now, so I can put that album cover up on the screen so you can see it, but there's no physical CD for me to show you. As a matter of fact, long story short, it's now available as a YouTube link, so you can go and check out the video. You can hear the whole album there. Certainly at the point that this was released, this was my best electric guitar playing to date. In 2015, I released an album called Rock Guitar Dreams, which is styled very much the way that classic Guitar Dreams was, except it's including rock guitar tracks that hadn't been released or hadn't been properly released by a group called PLP, which was essentially Sex and Witchcraft with a different bass player, or Hypospace with a singer, depending on how you want to look at it. And also some tracks by Superbug that were unreleased made it to this album, and one track by Risk at Birth.
There's no regret and no sympathy from me, for it is what we get and we never get again.
In 2015, my friend Vinny Sirigliano released this album, One Trick Heart. There's a little bit of harmonica and a lot of guitar that I played on this record. The album cover is very cool. I gotta pop that out and show you what's going on here. Great, that's above and beyond as far as the design on the actual disc. And then we have all the layout inside. 2015, One Trick Heart. Also in 2015, I produced an album called The Complete Chamber Works of Johannes Brahms for Clarinet, which was my then girlfriend had recorded enough live performances that she had recordings of the complete works, including a couple that she recorded with my mom, Faith Marchena. This is another one where I've created a YouTube video that has the entire album. If it had been on vinyl, maybe that would have been a 4-disc set, as you'd call it. The Complete Chamber Works of Johannes Brahms for Clarinet. In 2016, I played on a couple of tracks on Eileen Springer's album, Got to Be Brave. There's some classical guitar there. Chris Gallivan's also on that album. Hopefully, someday in the future, I'll get to collaborate with Eileen again. 2016, Got to Be Brave. My only release for the year 2017 was this album, Simply Red by Michelle Curry. She's actually written to Steve, thank you for the glorious sounds. Enjoy XO Michelle, there's a piece that's sort of telling the story of how blues developed in American popular music. There's some banjo on there. There's not a lot of guitar on this album, but I'm on it. My friend Adam McGowan, who is on the Hot Club album that we're about to get to, and he's also on that Valerie Sneed album from 2004. He plays violin on this album as well. Oh, Dave Burdett, he played with The Who. He played trumpet on this. And Jim Rice, he was the musical director for the Valerie Sneed album, and same thing for this Simply Red.
Basin Street is the street where the elite always be, way down in New Orleans.
This was my only release for the year 2018. This is Same of All the Rest by Mike Nolan. This is a beautiful album. Take a look inside here. There's some photographs. Cool design on the disc. Mostly what I played on this album was acoustic slide guitar, which Mike really likes that style. And I play out with Mike pretty regularly now. And when I do, I focus on that element. So there's a lot of different instrumentation. Terry Gracino also played on this album. Some clarinet.
Well, now she's saving me a bar stool and a mellow ragtime dance. Offering me a whiskey.
2019 was an excellent, prolific year for album releases. There's 4, and the first one that came out in January is called The Last Laugh, which is Risk at Birth, essentially 20 years after our previous release. As electronic music, some of those beats had been programmed in Dave Clayton's Groovebox. We revisited those probably starting around 2015. There's a lot of people on this album, a lot of singers in particular. If you were to imagine a group like Nine Inch Nails, that's in the ballpark of what we were going for. In February of 2019, we released Hot Club de Boston's self-titled debut album. It's also the only physical release of 2019. A lot of these other albums just came out digitally. Quick story about this. Our violinist lives in Austria now, so we really only had a couple of rehearsals in 2019, but we'll have a couple in 2020, and then we're playing, I believe it's in June of 2020. In March of 2019, my friend Kevin Hammer, who had been in Superbug on that album Closer to the Brain, he released an album by his group Evaded called Not a Destination. He asked me to record the lead guitar for this album, and at the time I was taking the Steve Vai class through Berklee Online. I hear more of a Steve Vai influence on my playing more than any other album that I'd ever done. I would say that's the state of the art of my playing, is what you hear on that album at this point. Not a Destination by Evaded. Steve Marchena, and this is my musical life history in 5 minutes or less. My mother, she was a hippie, and I was in an environment with lots of rock music. She would play guitar and sing and play harmonica. When I was 3 years old, my biological mother died and my grandparents adopted me. My grandmother that became my mother started me on piano lessons. I was really immersed in classical music at that point. My dad worked for Bose Corporation and he always had the latest gear. My grandparents were already obsessed with music before they lost their daughter, and when they did, they became even more obsessed with music. That's how I was raised. My parents that adopted me were telling me stuff when I was 3 years old that was pretty advanced about music. And I was playing violin. After violin, I played clarinet, started listening to Led Zeppelin, and I knew I needed to play guitar. When I was 15, first rock concert I went to was Aerosmith, and Yngwie Malmsteen opened up for that concert. So I thought, oh, this is how you play guitar in concert. And not taking anything away from Joe Perry, but when Aerosmith came on, I thought, why is he playing so slow and sloppy? Hey, I was 15, that's what I thought. By the time I was 16, I was playing in lots of bands and performances. I was 17, I finished high school, started gigging a lot and teaching guitar lessons. When I was 18, I was getting into slide guitar, and I remember my aunt took me to see the Juilliard String Quartet, and I was thinking, oh, I shouldn't play classical guitar anymore, I'll just focus on slide. And then I heard the Juilliard String Quartet, I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta play classical music. I was 19, released my first album with this group, Sex and Witchcraft. That's important because I've actually released about 40 albums, 29 of which are still available. When I was 21 years old, I decided I'm going to only play classical guitar. That didn't last, though. I loved playing other styles. I was in a house band on a cable TV show. And I decided I'm only going to play Robert Johnson style music. Didn't last. I knew I needed to play other styles. Started playing in a lot of different musicals and orchestra pits. I had entered guitar competitions before then. I did a guitar competition. I came in second place. I went to the Berklee Guitar Week. And when I was 26, I started Berklee and majored in guitar performance and the Boston Conservatory. I also started a duo with one of my old teachers, John Mason, and we were performing doing classical guitar duos. I graduated magna cum laude from Berklee, guitar performance major in 2000. I also put together an instrumental rock group. Ultimately, we released about 4 albums. We went on a tour of Canada all the way to the West Coast. And I put together a guitar trio with 2 of my former teachers, John Mason, who I mentioned I was playing duos with, and David Newsom, who's taught at Berklee now for a long time. We opened up for Al Di Meola. We did a European tour and master classes. Released a couple albums, did some stuff for WCRB. I should mention right now, too, all my life there have been forces that have made me want to decide to play one style of guitar over the other. And to those forces, I say, I'm not going to do it. I love playing all styles of music. In that spirit, I was a Guitarmageddon finalist and then opened up for Nuno Bettencourt and Jay Giles. There were gigs with the Boston Modern Orchestra Project and the Metropolitan Chorale. I was doing some touring with Valerie Sneed. There was this group Alien Black. The bass player from Megadeth had been on the album, and I played in a group that performed at Gillette Stadium at a party for Bob Kraft. You know, after that, there was several tours, the Space Machine Tour, the Buzz Tour, several solo tours. In 2007 and 2008, I taught at Berklee during the Summer Guitar Week program. There was this group, Superbug, and we performed Dark Side of the Moon live in its entirety, and we also got some commercial airplay for a couple original albums that we released. I was doing some touring with this guy Tim Janis, who he worked with Paul McCartney. I was about to leave on a tour that was going to Carnegie Hall. I got peritonitis, which meant that my colon exploded, and I was not able to go on that tour. When I started teaching at Bentley University, artist in residence, and teaching classes and private lessons there. I won the Outstanding Arts Instructor Award. I was doing a lot more musicals, including at the Schubert Theater. I put together an orchestra called Tal's Top, doing acoustic Led Zeppelin material. Put together this presentation, The History of Guitar Styles, where I started doing this thing, Guitarioke, with John Finn, who also teaches at Berklee. Every month, I got to prepare some music to perform with him, as well as organizing everything. Performed the complete works of Robert Johnson. We played all 29 Robert Johnson songs. I got an endorsement with Ortega Guitars. That's one of the best things that's ever happened to me because they make great instruments and they've given me a lot of free instruments. And I started Berklee Online here about a year and a half ago.